Bible prophecy is clear. As we get closer to the end time, deeper into the end times, as we get closer to the return of Jesus Christ, the world is going to turn against Israel. Okay? This is very important for you to understand because the world is turning against Israel more than I've ever seen in my entire life. I'm 58 years old. I was born just before the 1967 Six-Day War. And I'm telling you, never in my lifetime, and really never in the modern history of Israel, which is almost 8 decades old now, have we ever seen the world turn against Israel quite this way. Where are we going with this? What does this all mean? Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg with a YouTube exclusive for the Rosenberg Report. Now, the Hebrew prophet Zechariah told us in chapter 14, God said through Zechariah, "For I will turn the entire nation, all the nations, against Jerusalem." Now, in that particular prophecy, God is referring, in my view, to the tribulation. Okay, the 7-year period where we end up heading into Armageddon, right? The Apostle John, right, in the book of Revelation, chapter 16, talks about Armageddon, Harmageddo, right? This is when all the nations of the world will come against Israel and specifically will gather at the spot that Israel calls the mountain of Megiddo, the world calls Armageddon. Of course, in Ezekiel 38 and 39, we see more prophecies about so much of the world either turning against Israel, the specific countries mentioned by Ezekiel. We're talking about Russia, Iran, Turkey, and other countries. But also the rest of the world does nothing to come and help Israel at a moment where the Russian, Iranian, Turkish alliance is coming against Israel to plunder, invade, destroy, conquer, consume. So those are just a few examples of how the Bible talks about the world turning against Israel as we go deeper and deeper into the last days, right into the tribulation, okay? Now, we are not in the tribulation. We are not in those specific prophecies. We're not in the war of Gog and Magog yet, Ezekiel 38 and 39. We're not in Zechariah 14 yet. We're not in Revelation 16 yet. That's important to know. But we are seeing the world increasingly turning against Israel. And as Israel ramps up its operation to defeat and destroy and vanquish the terror force of Hamas in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, once and for all, as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu orders Israeli forces to destroy and vanquish Hamas in the Gaza Strip, once and for all, the world is turning more and more against Israel. Okay, this is a very, very serious moment. It's a very dark moment for Israel. Yes, Israel has had huge successes against the Iranian nuclear threat. Wonderful. Praise God. And not just Israel doing it, but of course with President Trump's assistance in those final hours as he sent B-2 bombers to drop bunker buster bombs on those 3 very hardened mountain-based nuclear sites. Okay, Israel and the U.S. did an incredible job neutralizing the Iran threat, and of course Hezbollah has been neutralized, and most of Hamas has been neutralized. But the one part of Gaza that Israel hasn't fully invaded until right now is Gaza City. Yes, Israel invaded parts of it early on in the operation when Israel started moving into Gaza to destroy Hamas in the fall of 2023 after the October 7th invasion, right? It took a while to mobilize all the troops, train them, equip them, get them ready for the type of urban warfare they were going into. Israel began to move in to Gaza in November of 23, and they took parts of Gaza City at that time, but they decided that there were other strongholds of Gaza that they needed to destroy and conquer first. Okay, so that's what happened. But now, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government, his cabinet, had thought, they had wished, they had hoped that by conquering Hamas in every other part of Gaza, including down in Khan Yunis, down in Rafah, right on the border of Egypt. All the things that President Biden and everybody else said, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Netanyahu did it. And it was very successful. But Netanyahu and his team thought this would put so much pressure, military pressure, on Hamas that Hamas would fold, that they would collapse, that they would lay down their arms, give up the hostages, and beg for an ability to go into exile and not be killed or arrested. That's what Netanyahu was hoping for. That's what he was working for. It has not happened. So, after weeks of discussions and after weeks of preparations, after weeks of a very intense internal debate in the Israeli cabinet, Netanyahu against the IDF chief of staff, Zamir, these two have really come to basically yelling at each other, and not just those two, but members of the security cabinet against IDF chief of staff, Eyal Zamir. There's been intense clashes inside the cabinet room because Zamir is saying, no, take a limited ceasefire deal for now, and let's get some more hostages out. But Netanyahu and his government says, no, we're not taking any more partial deals. We've offered all kinds of partial deals. Hamas has not taken them. And we're not going to get some of these hostages and then leave the rest to die. We want everybody, and we want them now. And President Trump has backed Netanyahu. President Trump has said, has warned Hamas, like, this is it. This is your last warning. I've given you multiple warnings. This is it. No more. Give all the hostages back immediately. And the implication is, and surrender, and fine, go into exile. Do it now, or all hell's going to break loose. So Trump is backing Netanyahu, but there's a huge debate in the Israeli society. It's not just in the cabinet room. Many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Israelis have turned out on the streets, at times 500,000. That's 5% of the entire Israeli population. 500,000 people have turned out to demand that Netanyahu take a partial deal. But Netanyahu says, no, there's no more time for these hostages. They're being starved to death. They need to all be released or they're all going to die. And he's saying we need to put so much pressure on Hamas that they'll give up everybody. That's a gamble, okay? Let's just be honest. That's a gamble. But the chief of staff of the Israeli military is telling Netanyahu he's wrong. Okay, that's a big deal. Many Israelis are saying, Netanyahu, you're wrong. In fact, based on many polls in Israel over the last few weeks, most Israelis, 60, 70, 75%, depending on the poll and the day, are saying Netanyahu should take a partial deal to get some hostages out, not wait for all of them. But there are those who say, look, we've offered so many partial deals, and Hamas has said no to all of them. It's time to finish this. It's time to invade Gaza City with the IDF and destroy Hamas once and for all. If they want to give us all the hostages back, fine. Then the war is over. If they want to give us all our hostages and lay down their arms and go into exile, then the war's over. Then we will have won. Israel will have won. That's what we want. But we're not waiting and letting Hamas sort of dribble this thing along, okay? And I can see both perspectives. But what's happening beyond that? What's happening is the world is turning more and more against Israel and turning more and more towards the Palestinians to create a sovereign Palestinian state. The French, the British, and many others, obviously the Saudis and the Arab world, they want a Palestinian state, or at least they say they do publicly. Historically, they have said that, but privately they've said, look, we don't want a bunch of radical Palestinians being in charge of Gaza any more than we want them to be in charge of what the world calls the West Bank, what Israel calls Judea and Samaria. My point is, there is real talk going on in the Arab world about there being no more countries joining the Abraham Accords, and maybe even some countries leaving the Abraham Accords. I don't know if that's serious talk, but it is of concern. The United Arab Emirates recently said that if Netanyahu decided to react to the world sort of unilaterally declaring a sovereign Palestinian state, then Israel would unilaterally annex more and more swaths of Judea and Samaria into sovereign Israeli territory. And the United Arab Emirates said, if you do that, you are putting into, that's a red line, they said. It's a red line, and that you're putting into jeopardy the Abraham Accords normalization deal that we agreed with you back 5 years ago. So that has put Netanyahu on pause. That's a serious warning by the UAE to Israeli leadership. Listen, that is not the way forward. That's not the way to build progress and to expand the Abraham Accords. It could end up unraveling the Abraham Accords. But then you've got more and more countries criticizing Israel, declaring arms embargoes against Israel. Okay, this is very, very serious. Canada has turned against Israel. President Trump is standing firm with Israel. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio has just gone to Israel to talk about this. But there's to reaffirm the relationship, but to also talk about how serious this is, that so much of the world is turning against Israel right now. Now, there's another element you need to be aware of, right? Just recently, Prime Minister Netanyahu ordered Israeli fighter jets to fire ballistic missiles from flying over the Red Sea into a high-rise apartment building, luxury apartment building in Doha, the capital of Qatar, the small, tiny, super rich Sunni Arab Gulf state that says it's an ally of the United States, but also sees itself as an ally of Hamas and an ally of the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Iranian regime. Qatar is hosting all the top Hamas leadership. These are terrorists, but they live in luxury, safe and secure, they have felt, in Doha, the capital of Qatar. And Qatar is the location for Al Jazeera, the most anti-American, anti-Jewish, anti-Israel, anti-Christian satellite television network in the world. It is just pumping out anti-American, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, anti-Christian rhetoric and propaganda 24/7. It is the most watched television network in the Arab world. And this is Qatar. Qatar is the host to Hamas terrorists and to Al Jazeera. So what does Netanyahu do? He has been trying to deal with Qatar in various ways, but he decided the other day to order Israeli fighter jets to fire missiles into the location where he believed, based on Israeli intelligence, that I think 5 top Hamas leaders were meeting. Now, Hamas leadership in Qatar has been taking a hardline position, telling their colleagues in those tunnels underneath Gaza, don't make a deal. Don't make a deal. Don't accept a partial deal. Don't accept a full deal. Don't make a deal. Don't give up the hostages. Stand your ground. The world's turning against Israel. Pretty soon, Israel will have to give up and withdraw. Then you'll win. Then we'll win. Then we can rejoice that we've conquered the criminal Zionist empire or whatever. So Netanyahu had it. If these guys hate Israel and they're so much complicit as part of October 7th, then they are fair game, even though they're in a sovereign Arab country. But Netanyahu made the decision, ordered the attack, and what happened? Best as we can tell so far, Israel didn't get the terrorists that they thought they were going to get. I don't know exactly yet. Nobody knows exactly yet what happened. How is that intelligence faulty? But not only did Israel not seem to succeed in getting the terrorists that they were targeting, they have unleashed more global attack politically against Israel. The entire Arab world has hardened its position against Israel and are talking about how do we get the United Nations Security Council and the United Nations General Assembly to harden its position against Israel, condemn Israel. And there are real concerns that countries are going to put on economic sanctions or do other things or support this International Criminal Court case against Israel, that Israel's the one committing genocide. And so at almost every level globally, the world is turning against Israel more and more. And as Israel tries to finish off Hamas in Gaza City, as well as in Doha, these moves are being met with intensifying hatred of Israel and opposition to Israel on the world stage. Now, I don't believe that what we're seeing currently is the fulfillment of those specific prophecies that I began this YouTube exclusive about. But the trajectory is worrisome, okay? And the big question is, if you think about it this way, if President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio and U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and the Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, if these guys weren't all super pro-Israel, if there was a different administration in place in Washington and in the House, the world turning against Israel could be matched with the United States turning against Israel. That's how dangerous this is right now. I'm not going to try to offer a bunch of suggestions on where we go from here. I just want you in this YouTube exclusive video for the Rosenberg Report to understand the stakes, that this is a very situation, it's getting worse, but I do believe Israel does have to finish off defeating, conquering, vanquishing Hamas in Gaza City. I don't see another way forward. If you could get the hostages out by some other deal, it would have happened by now. So I understand, I'm sympathetic to my Israeli friends and neighbors and colleagues who think, no, let's do a partial deal. Don't invade Gaza City. I get that. But no partial deal that President Trump and Steve Witkoff have offered and that Israel has said yes to has Hamas accepted. So it's a pipe dream to think that you could do anything but invade and finish Gaza once and for all. Now, if the Gaza operation is successful and Hamas is defeated and Israel can truly claim total victory, wonderful, number one. Number two, maybe we'll get all our hostages back, hopefully. Let's pray for that. And three, maybe then as things settle, the world will appreciate Israel's victory and its strength and its determination. But right now, the world is turning against Israel. And that's why followers of Jesus Christ, evangelical Christians and Christians of other persuasions, we need to stand with Israel. We need to pray for Israel. We need to be sympathetic towards Israel and the Jewish people because they are more isolated than ever before. With a YouTube exclusive for the Rosenberg Report, this is Joel Rosenberg asking you to continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and God to show mercy on his people.